After getting a commitment from Hunter Dickinson, who was widely agreed upon to be the top transfer in the portal, it looks like Kansas has a roster that once again is going to be competing for a national championship. Hi, I'm Austin Weber with Weber Bracketology, where every day is Selection Sunday. Even before picking up Dickinson, Kansas had been doing some really good work in the transfer portal. They picked up Arterio Morris very recently from Texas, who was a five-star guard. He played a little bit as a freshman last year, but that was a really loaded Texas team, so he didn't really have a lot of chances to play. And then they have Nicholas Timberlake from Towson, who is one of the best shooters in the country, and this Kansas team, especially with Grady Dick and Jalen Wilson too leaving, they desperately needed some players like Timberlake who could shoot. Along with the size that he provides inside, Dickinson also has the ability to step out and shoot a little bit, but it's really the post-scoring presence that they really needed from him, and it kind of gives them a well-rounded group of transfers. They have a ball handler who's quick and can score, they have a shooter, and they have a big. So all in all, it's a really well-rounded and obviously very talented group of transfers. On top of this transfer class, Kansas has also one of the very best freshman recruiting classes coming in, where they have a five-star player and then three four-star players. And I believe, according to 24/7, only one of their players is ranked outside the top 100, and he's ranked 106. So along with this veteran talent that's coming in, there's a lot of young talent that can be brought in, and then that's a lot of potential that needs to be tapped into to see what kind of success they can have. But obviously, it's going to be a very talented roster once again for Kansas. If you take a look at what their roster is going to be, they have an elite point guard in DeJuan Harris and now an elite big in Hunter Dickinson, two that you could say are in the top, at least top five at their positions. And honestly, in modern college basketball, an elite point guard is a must. And if you have a big like Hunter Dickinson, that can be huge as long as you surround him with pieces like shooting and like slashing guards and stuff like that. And Kansas, that's what they're doing. So roster-wise, they're really putting it together. Kansas didn't really have a big last year. KJ Adams was the player who started at the five, but he's only 6'6", and while his skill set did translate well as a center for the team, he didn't really have the size that you want from a big guy. There was Ernest Uday, but he was really raw as a freshman. Down the line, he got much better, especially with catching lobs on pick and rolls and stuff like that. But I mean, he's got work to do on defense. So having a big like Dickinson who can be there while Uday continues to improve, that's going to be huge for Kansas. Kansas also has Zuby Ejiofor, but given the signing of Dickinson, there's a good chance that in the next couple weeks he could end up transferring. But if not, that's just another player that they have to have a really deep rotation of big guys. Unlike last year where the inside is where Kansas had a lot of questions, the perimeter is going to be more so the questions that they have this year. I mean, they have Harris and Timberlake who are definitely going to start, but with Kevin McCullough having entered the draft but maintaining his eligibility, that's a question that still needs to be answered, because if McCullough comes back, that's great. He's still going to start. But if not, they don't really have a lot of size on the wing. Arterio Morris, he's got a long wingspan, and he's a really good defender, so he could play the three defensively. He'd obviously be more so the two on offense, just because he'd be a secondary ball handler with DeJuan Harris. But really, it's just going to be really interesting to see if McCullough comes back, because he's going to provide, obviously, really good defense on the perimeter. It's not like they won't if he doesn't come back. DeJuan Harris is one of the best defensive guards, one of the best defensive players in the country. Then obviously Morris has the length, but McCullough gives them a bit of size. He was a good rebounder last season as well as a scorer. So they really just probably need to add a little bit more size on the wing. Usually when teams have top 10 recruiting classes like Kansas, that means you're going to see a freshman or two at least in the starting lineup. But I think Kansas is going to have the benefit of being able to have all of their freshmen on the bench. Elmarco Jackson is their top recruit. He's a five-star, but he's a point guard, and he's not going to take DeJuan Harris's spot. And then with Arterio Morris in there, obviously he's not going to be a third ball handler. And though he's really talented, Morris is in his second year of college basketball, so it just makes a little more sense for him to start. But yeah, so their bench if you take a look at it, it's going to be a really young bench with obviously Uday is going to be on the bench no matter what. He's a sophomore. He's probably going to see a big jump this year, but he's still pretty raw. And if McCullough doesn't come back, then yeah, you'll have Morris there as well, who's still only a sophomore. But then other than that, it's really going to be those 4 freshmen that are going to be the bench wings, ball handlers, and stuff like that. Because of that, I think Kansas does need to go out and add another wing in the transfer portal, and they have plenty of time to do that. And there's plenty of players out there, and it's Kansas, so obviously someone's going to want to play there because I believe they have one reduced scholarship because of the self-imposed sanctions, and they just had Kyle Cuff. He just transferred out. They've had a lot of players transfer out, which is why they have all this space. So they do have space for one more player, and obviously I think they're going to go out and get it. And if I were them, I would look for a wing with size, probably someone who can shoot, because the only player you're going to be able to rely on to shoot the ball is Timberlake, which, I mean, they've got shooters coming in, some freshmen that can shoot the ball, and, I mean, DeJuan Harris has improved shooting, Arterio Morris can shoot, but they do need some more three-point shooting, because their best three-point shooters last year were Grady Dick and Jalen Wilson. They're both going to be gone. Kevin McCullough can shoot it if he comes back. But really, this team needs to go out, finish this roster with a bigger wing who can shoot. And I think they'll have probably a top 5 team in the country, no matter what, to start the season. Obviously, every year Kansas has a roster that can compete for a title. They're basically a 1 or 2 seed every season, but with the addition of Dickinson, I think it really just gives them what they didn't have last year, because David McCormick during their championship run, even though he wasn't the Final Four most outstanding player, he was the best player for them, and though he wasn't always the best player on the floor, he was a big guy in the middle that can score, and Bill Self loves using his big guys. He's very good at coaching them. And Hunter Dickinson is already coming in as a top 5, you could honestly say maybe the best big in the country who's returning. So I think Kansas has the kind of roster that is going to be poised to win a national title because they have size and they have a lot of athletic wings on the outside. They just need a little bit more three-point shooting, I think, to be one of the favorites. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and give a like and comment down below what you think of Kansas's roster and what you think about Hunter Dickinson choosing to commit to Kansas over the likes of Maryland and Kentucky and Villanova, and just if there's anything else, any other team you'd like me to talk about. But yeah, we're getting close to the end of players being able to enter the transfer portal, but obviously there's well over 1,000 players available who still are looking for homes.